In recent months, enough heroin has been smuggled into the United States to provide 150 million fixes, enough for every person between 15 and 24 to have had 4 apiece. John Hughes, editor of the Christian Science Monitor, has spent 5 months tracing the international sources of this drug flow, interviewing opium growers in Turkey, underworld dealers in France, and smugglers in Hong Kong. His explosive report on the grim Narcotics trail is in 7 parts, of which this is the first. I have just spent 5 months exploring the worldwide pipelines down which the illicit narcotics drug traffic flows. In the course of a round-the-world trip, I found that with no special entree to underworld circles, it was possible, with time and money, to buy every major illegal drug. In Afghanistan, Pakistan and Thailand, I came easily to the point of purchase for opium. In Laos, I could have bought it by the small plane load. Sometimes there were difficulties when sellers suspected me of being an undercover narcotics agent or a police officer. But with only a little more effort, I could have bought opium in India, Turkey and Mexico. In Hong Kong, I needed to walk but a few steps from the Christian Science Monitor office to get the distinctive scent of smoking opium from the neighborhood vendor. In Beirut, a Western diplomat offered me introductions to cocaine sellers in a number of nightclubs. Second-grade heroin in small doses was easily obtainable in Mexico and Hong Kong, but in Marseille I could have bought top-grade heroin by the kilo, £2. It would have taken an advance payment of $3,000 and several days' isolation in a hotel room while the sellers checked me out. If they were satisfied, I could have been reasonably sure of emerging with a kilo of pure heroin. So skillful and careful are the traffickers, however, that the transaction would have been completed without my ever meeting the deliverer. The movement of heroin from southern France to the United States was once dominated by the American Mafia. But now, the Corsican heroin manufacturers have so much to sell that they meet all the Mafia's requirements and have plenty to spare. So, in addition, they sell to Cuban, American Negro, and Puerto Rican buying rings who have newly set up shop around Marseille, as well as to independent purchasers. As for hashish and marijuana, I could have bought this as easily as toothpaste or candy throughout much of Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Mexico. In Afghanistan, hashish sellers distribute pamphlets advertising their own special brands. Hospitable policemen offer hippies a puff of hash. In Nepal, hashish comes cheaper than tobacco. In Pakistan, a police officer opposed to the narcotics traffic told me he had sold a kilo of hashish to make money for his son's birthday present. For the new synthetic drugs, the amphetamines, the barbiturates, the hallucinogens, the trail started on the beach in Hong Kong. There, the pushers are trying to proposition American children from the international school nearby. American schools in Bangkok, Thailand and Ankara, Turkey, have encountered similar problems. A leading Italian psychologist says 30% of young people between 14 and 22 in Rome are using some kind of drug. Use of stimulants is so serious in Sweden that the Swedish government is in the forefront of a campaign for strict new international controls. Deaths from heroin use have startled France. Even the Soviet Union has admitted some thefts of narcotic drugs from pharmacies and hospitals. The Soviets say illicit traffic poses no problems in their country. Other sources say Soviet officials are quietly concerned about the smuggled inflow of drugs from the West. Pep pills are in vogue with some Czechoslovakian youths. The Prague weekly Kvety says drug addiction in the capital is reaching alarming proportions. Some addicts have been getting high on cactus extract stolen from Prague's botanical gardens. In countries like Turkey and Lebanon, the narcotic seller is often an informer too, particularly upon small-time or amateur traffickers. Having made the sale, he tells the police. For this service, he gets immunity from prosecution. But the buyer is picked up. In some countries, the police go out of their way to arrest foreigners. This helps build their case that foreigners, not local citizens, are responsible for the narcotics traffic. Several hundred Americans have had tormented personal experience of this. They are serving long sentences for narcotics offences in such hellholes as Sands prison just outside Beirut. Crammed 40 to 50 in a cell, the prisoners have one hole in the floor for a toilet, one faucet for a shower. Many have suffered the humiliation of violent gay assault. A fortunate few have bribed their way into mental institutions where treatment is better. Despite the hazards, the profits from drug smuggling are immense. If transported successfully to the United States and cut into 45,000 packets for individual users, a kilo of heroin that costs a few $1,000s in Marseille sells for more than $250,000. With this kind of money to be made, involvement in the narcotics traffic extends into the most pseudo-respectable circles, and into the highest ranks of a number of governments. In Lebanon, a leading politician is one of the largest owners of hashish-producing land. The uncle of one Middle Eastern monarch reputedly controls the transportation of narcotics through his country. The sister of another head of state is persistently linked to the operation of a morphine-producing factory. In one Asian country, an American diplomat told me, "We want the drug traffic out of here stopped. But we have a problem. If American narcotics agents start nosing around here too closely, they're going to uncover some links to pretty high places. In Laos, the army is involved in the opium business, and Lao Air Force planes transport opium. In Thailand, the massive outflow of narcotics could hardly take place without collaboration at fairly elevated levels. In the past, involvement in the drug traffic has extended into the cabinet. It may still today. The diplomatic bag, immune from customs scrutiny, is an ideal vehicle for narcotics traffic. A number of Latin American diplomats have been caught moving narcotics, including ambassadors from Mexico, Guatemala, and Uruguay. This year, Italian police arrested a Pakistani ambassador on narcotics charges. Other diplomats are being watched. Personnel of a number of international agencies with diplomatic privileges, particularly in Southeast Asia, are under suspicion. In Lebanon, the traveler in trouble with the law who needs new documents can visit the ambassador of one Central American country. No questions are asked. The fee for a brand new passport of that country is $1,000 in cash. One recent purchaser was an LSD chemist on the run from British police. He used his new passport to travel to North America. Money, however, is not always the reason for involvement in the drug traffic. Sometimes the motive is political or ideological. Western agents, for instance, believe the Israeli intelligence service permits Arab smugglers to move shipments of narcotics across Israeli-held territory. The smugglers are Bedouin tribesmen. In return for the transit route, they give the Israelis military information about Arab positions. There is also narcotics, smuggling across the Arab-Israeli border for straight gain. The hashish that visiting Jewish hippies buy in Israel comes from Lebanon. In Laos, some of the main growers of illegal opium are tough mountain tribesmen upon whom the American Central Intelligence Agency relies heavily in the campaign against the communists. Opium is the principal cash crop in the non-communist part of the country. The Central Intelligence Agency is cognizant of, if not party to, the extensive movement of opium out of Laos. One charter pilot told me that friendly opium shipments get special Central Intelligence Agency clearance and monitoring on their flights southward out of the country. The same source alleged 2 or 3 flights without this protection crashed under mysterious circumstances. Communist intelligence agents are similarly involved with the use and transportation of narcotics. Soviet agents posing as newsmen in India are known to have made use of narcotics in the course of their intelligence work. In the no-holds-barred world of espionage, it is a logical instrument. The Soviets accuse the Chinese communists of manufacturing narcotics and unloading them on the world market with political design. The Chinese undoubtedly do manufacture drugs, but there is no evidence that they are employing them abroad on such a massive scale. For instance, as did the Japanese prior to their invasion of China in the 1930s. Before their military onslaught, the Japanese poured in opium to sap Chinese resistance. For drug smugglers from Turkey and the Middle East, communist countries on the road route to Western Europe are a sanctuary. Opium shipments are stored there, road trailers dropped off or switched, and truck registration papers and license plates changed. A cafe in Sofia, Bulgaria, is the known haunt of Arab smugglers. Yet rarely do the communists interfere with narcotics shipments from Middle Eastern countries, whose friendship they are anxious to cultivate. Whatever their motivation, the merchants engaged in this multi-million-dollar junk or narcotics business resort to the most bizarre, the most extreme, the most ingenious methods to get their wares through. Along the Turkish-Syrian border, the authorities have strung barbed wire and planted minefields. But the smugglers, moving convoys of raw opium, snip the wire and drive herds of goats ahead of them to explode the mines. Camels carry opium in metal cylinders in their stomachs. One cheerful Afghan showed me how to slit the skin of a sheep, slip a wad of opium in, and sew the skin up again before herding the shaggy animal across the border into Iran. From Laos, charter pilots airdrop opium in watertight bags in the Gulf of Siam. Deep-sea fishing boats from Thailand pick it up, sail to Hong Kong, then sink it in shallow water off the coast. Chinese fishing junks trawl for it later and quietly run it ashore. Narcotics are smuggled in hollowed-out books, in scuba tanks, and moulded into chessboards. They are disguised as lemons and hidden in pierced watermelons, and sealed in cans of peaches, coffee, and olive oil. They are carried in dolls and toy horses, and even in babies' diapers. Women couriers conceal them in girdles and brassieres. California customs agents caught one pregnant woman coming off a President liner with 40 pounds of narcotics in a false stomach. In Turkey, police found a hunchback with 9 pounds of narcotics in his hump. From Colombia, one smuggler tried to ship 95 pounds of marijuana into the United States in a crate full of boa constrictors. Others have tried molding narcotics as rosary beads. But still, favorite hiding places for traffickers are the false-bottomed suitcase and the concealed compartment in a truck or automobile. A surprisingly large amount of narcotics travels through the international mail, labelled as innocent gifts. In one big hall in Hong Kong, narcotics were packed as insulation in the walls of a shipment of refrigerators. One more interesting fact about the major criminals behind the narcotics traffic: rarely do they use drugs themselves. They know better. The pot trail from Europe to Thailand is littered with tragedies as hippies and other American young people get caught in drug smuggling networks. In this, the second article in a series, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes tells how they land in hellhole jails, attempt suicide, and otherwise ruin their lives. By no means are these incidents the answer to the problem. In Thailand, a young American already jailed on a narcotics offense seriously mutilates himself with a razor blade while on a trip. Thai authorities give him medical treatment, but resist American embassy pleas for his release. Into the American embassy in Afghanistan staggers a young girl. Her mind is blown by drugs. She is pregnant. She's been used as a prostitute for months. In response to the embassy's cabled appeal for help, her parents disown her. The length of the pot trail is littered with tragedies such as these. They are unrepresentative, but all are traceable to narcotics usage by these youthful wanderers through Asia and the Middle East. It is often tragic enough, but the story does not end there. A new and more serious factor is the extent to which many are trafficking in narcotics across international borders. Some have been recruited by big-time narcotics merchants to smuggle drugs into the United States on a professional basis. One such team of couriers is working for a narcotics ring on the American West Coast. They carry round-the-world tickets. They stay at luxury hotels like the Intercontinental in Karachi. If they are caught, bail and legal defense are quickly forthcoming. They do not tell the name of their employer. They keep the instruments, the merchandise they carry. At present, hashish is the main merchandise. Derived from the resin of the cannabis plant and with much more kick than marijuana, it fetches hefty prices on the American market. Earlier, American children in Pakistan were found to be buying opium, both from government-licensed dealers and illegal merchants. Government spokesmen argue that drug-taking is alien to local culture and has been stimulated by the inflow of Western hippies. Says one Pakistani official, "We are still modernizing ourselves. Alcohol and narcotics are equally taboo in our society." Nevertheless, some government officials in Pakistan themselves smoke hashish. So do army generals in Afghanistan. Technically illegal, hashish is nevertheless readily available. At one party in the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, the host sent out for a kilo. The price, $15. Hashish, known as charas in India and Pakistan, is the more potent product of the cannabis plant. But the milder cannabis leaf, bhang, is not controlled. Ground up with almond and pistachio and diluted with milk, it is guzzled by the gallon. Pakistani truck drivers are generally good for a couple of lumps of hashish. Their transport network makes it easy for them to move it from one end of the country to the other. They also use it themselves. One explained, "The only way we can make any money is by driving round the clock. We take hashish to stay awake all night." Hospitable policemen in both Afghanistan and Pakistan sometimes offer hippies a joint of hash. With this lax approach to drug use, some hippies have scented easy money for negligible risk. A couple of kilos of hashish bought cheaply in Pakistan or Afghanistan may fetch enough in the United States to support them for a couple of years. Some students have sought to finance their college studies with the profits from hashish smuggling. In many cases, the risk is greater than they imagined. Some countries are easygoing on drug users, but throw the book at traffickers. Some countries still give a wrist slap for narcotics offences, but others, like Iran, have introduced capital punishment and apply it. In Pakistan, a reliable source of hashish, penalties for trafficking are still light. Karachi's police chief, Deputy Inspector General Mohammed Yusuf Orakzai, says he thinks they should be tougher. But at present, an offender spends only a few months in jail. In Afghanistan, the foreigner caught trafficking by customs officers may simply be given a scare, then sent on his way. Some hippies found with drugs at Kabul airport have got off with a night at the police station, seizure of their baggage, and expulsion on the next plane. The story is much different in Turkey, Lebanon, and other countries where a foreigner may get 10 years to life imprisonment for trafficking in narcotics. More than 400 Americans are currently in foreign jails for narcotics offences. The conditions are often indescribable. Cells are overcrowded, filthy, ridden with rats. Food is foul. Gay assault is common. Parole and remission of sentence are rare. Says one observer in Lebanon, "In this country, they do not give prisoners time off for good behaviour. They give them more time for unruly behaviour." Foreign embassies can do little when their citizens fall foul of the narcotics laws in such countries. Though harassed by influential parents, congressmen and senators, American consular officials explain that there is little alternative but for American youths to serve their sentences. The narcotics war along the Mexican-American border is intense, but still, tons of heroin and marijuana flood Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and California every month. In this, the third of a series, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes tells of frustrating efforts to halt the flow. In the communications center, warning lights flicker. Electronic sensors along the border detect infiltration in an isolated sector. At the same time, something shows up on the edge of a radar screen. An unidentified aircraft coming in fast and low in the darkness. Buttons are punched, telephones jangle. Messages are flashed to the Air Intelligence Center. A helicopter is sent clattering into the air to check the ground probe. A pursuit plane is launched to try to force down the incoming aircraft. All this is happening on the American side of the Mexican-United States border. The infiltrators are not North Vietnamese guerrillas, but Mexican burros, or smugglers, trying to make it into the United States with an illicit load of narcotics. The plane, chartered by narcotics traffickers and flown by an American mercenary, is trying to evade the Border Patrol's radar net. If it succeeds, it will put down at a remote airstrip with a full load of smuggled drugs for American addicts. Incursions like these are routine today along the United States' 1,800-mile border with Mexico. United States customs officers, border guards, and narcotics agents are waging a running war against traffickers intent on maintaining a massive, illegal flow of drugs across America's southern border. The contest is mostly uneven. Despite heightened effort and tightened security, the lawmen are spread thin. Wild terrain favors the smugglers. Much of the time, it is the smugglers who win. American and Mexican authorities seize some shipments, and their increased effort has forced traffickers to vary their methods. As the heat is put on land and air routes across the border, there are indications that traffickers are making greater use of sea lanes. Thousands of pleasure and fishing boats operate in the coastal waters off Southern California and in the Gulf of Mexico. Besides fish and weekend sailors, some carry narcotics. 15% of all heroin used in the United States comes from Mexico. All of Texas and California are served from Mexico. In the Mexican states of Sinaloa, Durango, Sonora, Nayarit, and Chihuahua, some 2,000 peasants grow opium illegally. Converted into heroin in clandestine laboratories, it is smuggled across the border at such crossing points as San Isidro, Calexico, Nogales, El Paso, Eagle Pass, and Laredo. From the American border towns, it is quickly moved on to San Diego, Los Angeles, Denver, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Houston, Fort Worth, and Dallas. Mexico is also a transshipment point for heroin from France en route to the United States. The heroin comes through the eastern part of Veracruz or by air through Mexico City. Then it is smuggled north and onto cities on the United States eastern seaboard, usually New York. Mexico supplies most of the marijuana or pot used in the United States. Marijuana grows everywhere in Mexico, but particularly in the states of Guerrero, Jalisco, Sinaloa, and Tamaulipas. More potent than American-grown marijuana, it finds a ready market. Some experts say as much as 1,000 tons a year flood across the border. A presidential task force concluded recently that the ready availability of Mexican marijuana has significantly affected the increase in drug abuse in the United States. Much travels blatantly by car through regular checkpoints on main highways across the border. Thousands of American tourists and thousands of Mexican workers cross the border each day. They are impossible to screen. Says one top narcotics agent, "You cannot search every truck and car. What you need is inside information about a specific shipment. Without it, a lot obviously gets through." Thus, the innocent-looking weekend camper, the visitor to a Mexican bullfight, or the serviceman heading for Tijuana could each carry a couple of kilos of heroin back to the United States, or even a trunkload of marijuana. Other loads are carried across the border on foot by Mexican burros or smugglers. They choose remote, unfenced sectors and slip through under cover of darkness. Planes, generally rented or leased in the United States, are flown to makeshift airstrips in Mexico to pick up shipments of narcotics. Year-round, pilots weave their way through mountains or fly low at night in an effort to evade detection. Once back in the United States, they land on highways or at little-used country airports or airdrop their cargoes at prearranged points. Alarmed by the drug flow from Mexico, the Nixon administration last year launched a campaign to cut back the traffic. A top-level task force made several recommendations. Soon after, the United States government launched Operation Intercept, a much-publicized experiment in which travelers to the United States from Mexico were subjected to intensified search at the border. Cars were stacked up for hours on end. Normal traffic was disrupted. The experiment was short-lived. No professional traffickers sent shipments through when they were under such close scrutiny. Operation Intercept was quickly superseded by Operation Cooperation. The United States and Mexican governments agreed on a bilateral program to cut back the drug traffic. Government liaison at an elevated level has continued since. But the object of Operation Intercept was not so much to arrest drug smuggling amateurs as to jog the Mexican government itself into action. In this respect, it succeeded. The Mexican army launched drives with up to 10,000 soldiers sweeping through the mountains in search of illicit marijuana and opium plantations. Planes have dropped leaflets to farmers in remote areas, warning them to get out of the narcotics business. All this is welcome. While the United States has tightened security on its side of the border, the Mexicans have pledged to hunt traffickers on their side and step up campaigns to eliminate their opium and marijuana crops. Since the agreement, Mexican police have publicized a number of seizures. They smashed a heroin ring in Tijuana and put a heroin laboratory out of business. The United States is making available aircraft, sensing devices, and various other kinds of equipment to help the Mexicans in their drive. Despite Mexico's declared good intentions, factors such as corruption continue to make experts skeptical of any dramatic cutback in the flow of drugs across the United States southern border. Says one high-placed Mexican official, "If you have money in this country, you can carry on any racket. And if you get caught, you can get off. It depends on who you know and how much you can pay." But the flow of drugs across the border has to date shown no appreciable decline. Experts believe Mexico faces a long, hard struggle against the narcotics producers and traffickers. As with many poor countries, there is the problem of corruption among the police. Some policemen, though ill-paid, wear well-cut suits and own luxurious houses, which clearly could not have been financed from their official salaries. A center of the world's narcotics racket is Turkey, from which 80% of the heroin used in the United States comes. In this fourth article of a series, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes tells how the racket works and how the racketeers escape government control. The names of the top 9 or 10 men behind the Turkish narcotics racket are known to American, Turkish, and other narcotics agents, but there is little hope of catching them. Aloof behind a facade of respectability, they are protected by bodyguards from their competitors and by clever attorneys from the law. They are rich, and they are powerful. This is the organizational and money end of the business which makes Turkey one of the world's principal suppliers of illegal opium, and thus the origin of some 80% of the heroin used in the United States. Like major traffickers everywhere, the big names in the Turkish narcotics business are never caught in possession of their merchandise. Never tainted with the smell, like fresh-cut hay, of newly gathered opium. They are the wheeler dealers who finance, buy, sell, and arrange transit out of the country. It is the middlemen, the small fry couriers, and the growers who run the risk. Each year, on the eve of the opium planting season, the men who mastermind the Turkish narcotics business dispatch their commission men to the growing areas. The bright lights of Istanbul are put behind. The city's skyline, with soaring spires and minarets and Islamic domes of exquisite contour, recedes beyond the Bosporus. The commission men head out across Anatolia toward southern Turkey, into some of the most wild and scraggy country in the world. Mountain streams twist and turn through the terrain in frenzy, rushing through gullies and leaping down into gorges. Goat tracks snake upward to peaks, which afford smugglers total vantage and total surprise. The Turks who live here are jealous of their independence and suspicious of intruders, says one law enforcement officer. They come out with their hunting dogs snarling and their guns blazing. Later, they ask questions. Provinces like these, Afyon, Usak, Konya, Denizli, are the heart of the opium country. In fact, Afyon means opium. Here the commission men, renewing their long-standing contacts, set their quotas for the amount of illegal opium they will buy, and that therefore the farmer must grow in the coming season. Usually, this illegal quota is a percentage diverted from the crop, which the farmer grows quite lawfully for the government. Some 110,000 farmers grow opium in Turkey, which is a major producer for medicinal purposes, the legal crop amounting to more than 100 tons a year. A farmer in legal production simply plants a few more hectares of opium for his private use. Opium production is supposed to be controlled by Toprak, the Turkish government land office. Farmers are licensed and in theory must hand over their entire crop to the state buying organization. But in practice, there is little policing. The growing areas are remote. Central authority is weak. The local Toprak agent on the scene may be paid to keep quiet about illicit production. If he reports evasion, he may be killed. His legal output, he must sell to the government. The price he gets is around $10 a kilo. For whatever he can divert and sell to the illegal buyers from Istanbul, he gets around $30 a kilo. Turkish policemen are vulnerable. A city cop earns about $40 a month, somewhat less than an energetic shoeshine boy hustling tourists. A police captain with long service may make $110 a month. In the countryside, some of the gendarmerie earn 36 cents a month. Often they are assigned to their own villages, and as one lawman says, they are unlikely to turn in their own fathers and brothers. There are brave and honest policemen in Turkey, but they are short of equipment to hunt down illegal opium growers and smugglers. This shortage, due in part to the United States, now is beginning to be remedied. Until recently, the Turkish policeman could not be sure that his ancient keyless revolver would not explode in his hand when fired. Thus, it is that when the Turkish opium farmer harvests his crop about this time of year, he does so with little supervision from the government. The poppy plants have grown to their full height and flowered in delicate shades of mauve and pink. Soon after the petals fall, the farmer and his family move in, carefully slitting the pods of the poppies which are left behind. Out through the incisions oozes a milky liquid. This is opium. For a few hours it is allowed to harden. During this time it turns deep brown. Then from each pod it is scraped off and kneaded into a ball until the farmer has collected a lump several pounds in weight. In this manner begins the long journey which terminates with the injection of heroin into the veins of the quivering, shaking junkie in New York or one of a dozen other American cities. Legally grown opium is turned into the government buying station. But for illegal opium, the next step is Istanbul. At a quiet meeting place, usually at night, the commission men take it over and make payment. Everyone is armed. Everyone is suspicious. This is the time for a double cross or a dangerous ambush by narcotics agents who have penetrated the organization. When agents do spring a trap, the firefight is usually furious. If the transaction goes without incident, the delivery of the agreed quotas to the commission men moves forward. The opium moves by truck or van. There has been more traffic recently in Gaziantep province on Turkey's border with Syria. Specialists there move the loads, as much as a goat or mule can comfortably carry, across into Syria. It is business, because both governments have strung the border with barbed wire, dotted it with machine gun posts, and mined it. But some border guards can be bribed. Even the honest ones cannot be everywhere at once. The smugglers know the best times and places to cross. They evade patrols, snip the wire, and drive sheep, goats, or other animals ahead of them to clear a path through the minefields. Once into Syria, the opium is handed over either to an agent of the Istanbul drug merchants or an agent of a new ring which has bought the shipment. to a primitive laboratory or at a guarded camp, remote in the hills, the opium is converted into morphine base. It is a simple chemical process. In a series of steps, the morphine content is filtered and precipitated out of the opium. About 10 parts of opium make 1 part of morphine base. In the Middle East, it is shipped onward as yellowish powder in plastic bags. In Asia, the morphine is packed into rectangular blocks. Besides being much smaller to carry and conceal, the morphine base now is more valuable. 10 kilos of opium at $30 a kilo are worth $300 in Turkey. Converted to a kilo of morphine, they are worth $500. Delivered in different form to Marseille to the Corsican Narcotics ring, which will convert it to heroin, the same kilo of morphine doubles in value to $1,000. But getting it there taxes the drug smuggler's ingenuity. After conversion, the traditional route has been down into Lebanon and thence by ship to Marseille. But Lebanese authorities, stung by international criticism, have lately cracked down on the morphine traffic. So the Turks have been developing and managing their own transportation routes. Ships are still especially good bets for smuggling narcotics. They have thousands of hiding places. Other shipments now travel by road from Turkey to Western Europe. One advantage for the smugglers is that part of the land route lies through communist countries, where Western narcotics agents find it difficult to operate. Agents may have a narcotics shipment under surveillance as it enters Bulgaria from Turkey. By the time it emerges in a non-communist country at the other end of Europe, they lose it. Sometimes, in order to throw agents off the trail, shipments are dropped off for temporary storage in communist countries. Traffickers use the opportunity to do painting jobs and switch license plates and registration papers. Thus, when a truck emerges in Italy or Germany, it may have different drivers, different papers, and be a different vehicle altogether. In 1967, the Turks announced they would get out of the opium business altogether by the crop of 1970 to 1971. This seemed to mean that they would reduce the areas of legal opium cultivation until by 1971 nothing would be left. From 21 opium-growing provinces in 1967, they did cut back to 18 provinces in 1968, 11 provinces in 1969, and 9 this year. The target for next year is 7 provinces. Then the big question is, what happens after that? In theory, the legal opium crop should have been eliminated. In practice, it looks unlikely that it will be. While legal production continues, illegal production appears inevitable. Traps from various parts of a chassis are built in. Some specialists split gasoline tanks on cars and trucks and fit secret compartments almost impossible to find, even with steel probes. Others suspend false compartments into drivers' cabs. In one case, American and French agents seized a truck carrying watermelons from Turkey to France. They slashed open every watermelon and found nothing. Then agents ran tape measures over the inside and outside of the truck. They produced an abnormal discrepancy. So, they ripped it open and found a built-in compartment which hid 525 kilos of opium and 54 kilos of morphine. With the production and smuggling of narcotics so widespread and blatant, what is the Turkish government doing to cut back the traffic? Corsican narcotics thugs master the chemical manufacture of heroin and sell it to the mafia for American marketing. In this 5th article of a series, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes describes a dawn raid on one heroin factory. The tough and bawdy waterfront of Marseille, France, and the city's network of drains and sewers are key elements in the narcotics trail. The city's Corsican underworld dominates the trade with cunning and ruthlessness. As chill night turned to dank dawn, the narcotics agents worked their way through the French woods. To ensure total surprise, they had left their cars several miles away. Now, through high-powered glasses, they had under observation the isolated villa which was their target. Inside the house, they could see three men working amid all the paraphernalia of a chemical laboratory. Gas burners, glass flasks and tubes, suction pumps, scales, and vials of chemicals. The men wore white coats and rubber gloves. One thing more showed they were no ordinary chemists. Each of them wore a gas mask. It was to protect them from the fumes and effects of their product, heroin. For their highly profitable but illegal activity, the heroin chemists had chosen their site well. Only 30 miles from the big French seaport of Marseille, the village of Notre-Dame-des-Anges is nevertheless off the beaten track. The villa the heroin chemists selected there was on a hill, reached by a country road along which only 1 or 2 cars travelled each day. Even so, the heroin chemists were extra cautious. Even now, as the French and American agents positioned themselves, a rare car passed by. Immediately the chemists stopped work. One came outside to check. Reassured, they continued. Carefully, the narcotics agents checked their time. French law bars, police raids on a man's home between 9 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. Then they rushed the villa. The 3 chemists caught are now serving lengthy prison sentences. Their heroin was seized and is part of a batch which will never be pumped into the veins of American addicts. This recent seizure is one of the brighter chapters in the story of the war against the international junk or narcotics merchants. Another heroin laboratory was put out of business about the same time. Successful though these operations were, they scratched the surface of the crime ring which makes Marseille the center of the heroin manufacturing industry. 80% of the heroin used by addicts in the United States is produced in and around Marseille from morphine and opium, which originate in Turkey. The Corsicans who mastermind this ugly traffic in Marseille are tight-knit and notoriously difficult to infiltrate. Says one crack American agent, "It is not difficult to see why Marseille has become the hub of the heroin manufacturing industry. Even without the Corsican underworld community, it is a city renowned for its tough and bawdy waterfront dives, where any criminal transaction is easily arranged. It is a sprawling port, cluttered with miles of grey derricks and cranes which afford unlimited opportunity for smuggling. I guess they have to be rated the most adept criminals in the world," the agent adds. In one of the raids mentioned earlier, one gang member had the misfortune to be absent from the heroin laboratory when narcotics agents smashed in. His body was found the next day with 6 bullets in it. When information is forthcoming from within the ring, it is usually from a gang member jealous over a stolen woman or disaffected over some other affront, and bent on personal revenge. Marseille is the hub of the heroin racket. A gentle splash as a waterproof bundle is dropped over a ship's side, or a thud as a package is thrown from a black spot over the port fence, and the job is done. An old World War II resistance centre, Marseille, is full of hiding places, crisscrossed by drains and sewers. During the war, resistance fighters led Allied agents through this underground network and whisked German prisoners and bodies away through it. Today, these tunnels serve the junk merchants, who use them to move narcotics and the materials necessary to process heroin. Under cover of darkness, it is easy to take delivery of a shipment of yellow morphine hidden aboard a ship just in from Turkey, or to stash a parcel of heroin aboard one bound for Canada, Mexico, or the United States. Conversion of morphine into heroin is much more sophisticated than the rough and ready process by which opium is turned into morphine. The heroin process demands chemical skills and is dangerous. The chemists risk addiction through fumes and powdered heroin particles in the air. This is why they wear masks. Beyond this, a slip can cause a fatal explosion. To elude detection, the heroin merchants have developed many techniques. One clue to the existence of a heroin laboratory is the vast amount of electric power it uses, far more than would be normal in an ordinary household. So, the heroin chemists tap the main power lines, stealing their electricity from the city. They are careful to pass a normal amount of electricity through the meter, so police checking consumption find nothing unusual. Another giveaway is water waste from the heroin laboratories. The chemists cannot dump it into city sewers for fear police will detect and trace the large amount of acetic anhydride acid in it. Their usual disposal method is to run it off via long hoses onto waste ground, or in the case of a country villa, down the side of a hill or mountain. Though Marseille's Corsican underworld runs the heroin racket, Corsicans are not usually in the business of transporting narcotics to the United States. They produce and sell the narcotics. The principal buyer is the American Mafia, which handles smuggling into the United States. While transporting heroin, couriers are often under surveillance by other members of the underworld network. If a courier is busted, arrested, the junk merchants are usually aware of it immediately. If the courier agrees to lead government agents to his contact, by the time they get there, the trail is cold. Aside from their own Sicilian dialect, mafia junk merchants use a jargon almost incomprehensible to outsiders and eavesdropping narcotics agents. Says one mafia member to another in a long-distance call from New York to Sicily, "I need a dozen white shirts. Tell Toto everything's taken care of on the mountain." Mafia narcotics smuggling routes run via Canada and Mexico to the United States, and directly through American East Coast ports. One heroin smuggling ring used a Trans-World Airlines route from West Germany to Kansas City, Missouri. The couriers carried their narcotics in flight bags. Shortly before arrival in New York, they hid their packages in the aircraft's toilet. Then they went through New York Customs confidently. After clearing customs and reboarding the aircraft, they retrieved their heroin from the toilet. From Kansas City, they took a domestic flight back to New York, delivering their wares with negligible risk. Their method was discovered when the Trans-World Airlines flight developed engine trouble on one occasion in New York, and the company ordered a plane change. The couriers panicked, tried to get their heroin off the discarded aircraft, and were caught red-handed by customs agents. To move heroin into the United States, the junk merchants also use scores of couriers who carry packets taped to their legs or concealed in special vests, bags, or false-bottom suitcases. For the junk merchants, it is a gamble, but one loaded with the odds in their favor. They can afford to lose a large number of couriers and still make vast profits out of the shipments that they get through. In one case, an American of Sicilian origin carried a large heroin consignment for his family, without ever knowing it. His father, a prominent New York Mafia member, sent him back to Sicily for his honeymoon. With the bridal couple went a handsome new American car. Overnight, Mafia members took the car apart and fitted it with secret compartments full of heroin. Unknowing, the son shipped his car back to the United States, passing uneventfully through customs. A little later, his father asked to borrow the car. The heroin was recovered by the American Mafia, the car returned, and the innocent son took up his business, unaware that for the price of a honeymoon in Sicily, the Mafia had imported a massive shipment of heroin. After a few days, a relative in Sicily insisted on removing the car to get it washed and serviced. Translated, that means, ship a dozen kilos of heroin. Tell our Corsican supplier in Marseille that I've deposited the cash for him in the usual numbered Swiss bank account. For nearly 200 years, Hong Kong's opium dens have been centers of Oriental drug trafficking. They still are. And now, in addition, the island colony feeds a flow of hard drugs to the United States. In this, the sixth of a series, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes tells how Oriental addicts, chasing the dragon, are victimized. Sleet slashes down. Wind whips the wave-tops into frenzied spray. On the heaving waters of the South China Sea, the government launch rolls, tosses, pitches, and shakes itself free of the sea with a series of tormented shudders. In the wheelhouse, the preventive service officers, clinging to hand grips, can barely see the outlines of Hong Kong Island behind them. But for the moment, their interest does not lie landward. It is concentrated on the deep-sea trawler, wallowing several hundred yards ahead. The trawler is from Thailand. It carries an illicit cargo of opium and morphine, but it is steaming carefully outside Hong Kong's territorial waters. It will continue to do so as long as the preventive service launch is on scene. On its present course, the trawler cannot be searched by Hong Kong authorities. Eventually, out of sheer exhaustion on the part of the crew, and for want of fuel and supplies, the preventive service launch will have to head home. Then the trawler will make its bid. It may rendezvous at sea with a Hong Kong fishing junk owned or chartered by narcotics traffickers. More than 10,000 such junks move constantly through Hong Kong's coastal waters. Or the trawler may run its cargo ashore on one of the more than 200 small islands lying within Hong Kong territory. Later, from a deserted beach, the shipment will be picked up by a local fishing boat. Or the trawler may simply dump its illegal cargo at a pre-arranged spot in about 10 fathoms of water. The cargo will be sealed in watertight drums, weighing about 80 pounds apiece. Linked by strong rope or cable, they will lie hidden on the seabed. After the trawler has gone, the Hong Kong junk will grapple for them, haul them in, and carry them into port. Whichever plan is used, the junk making the final run into Hong Kong harbour will probably carry the narcotics slung beneath its hull. If the junk is challenged by a cruising preventive service launch, the ropes holding the cargo will be slashed. The compromising evidence will sink to the seabed, and the junk crew will be clean. Such are the frustrations confronting preventive service officers and detectives of the Royal Hong Kong Police Narcotics Bureau as they seek to stem the massive flow of illegal drugs into Hong Kong. Perched on the rim of communist China, Hong Kong has long been romanticized as the setting for all kinds of mysterious Oriental pursuits. Its narrow, winding streets are supposed to harbour espionage agents of many countries, smugglers, convicts on the run, and kings and queens of vice. Some of the stories are true, some less accurate. What is only too tragically correct, however, is that Hong Kong has been nurtured on the opium trade and is still today a focal point for the flow of narcotics through the Far East. Its own addicts, 80,000 in a population of 4 million, give Hong Kong one of the highest narcotics addiction rates in the world. To satisfy these alone, traffickers smuggle in each year more than 10 tons of opium and 4 tons of heroin, or the morphine base to make it. But drugs are also transshipped through Hong Kong to other destinations in Asia, and to the profitable markets of the United States and Canadian West Coasts. Police seize only a fraction of what comes in. Last year, they seized nearly $7 million worth of illegal narcotics in the colony. For them, it was a particularly good year. Yet Hong Kong's addicts alone consumed an estimated $38 million worth of narcotics last year. Since the early 19th century, Hong Kong has been deeply involved in the opium traffic. Opium had been used in China for many years, but with the opening of the sea routes, European traders began delivering it by the shipload to the Chinese. The British dominated the profitable trade, selling to a ring of Chinese merchants in the port of Canton, north of Hong Kong. When Chinese authorities tried to suppress the trade, violence led to the First Opium War. It ended with the Treaty of Nanking in 1842, under which Britain got legal possession of Hong Kong. Despite official British disapproval of the traffic thereafter, Hong Kong flourished as a centre of the opium trade. With the fall of China to the communists, refugees from the mainland swamped the colony. Many found themselves helpless, and eventually hopeless, in an overcrowded and fiercely competitive society. They turned to narcotics for escape. Today, 3/4 of Hong Kong's narcotics addicts have forsaken opium for heroin. Usually they take red or purple heroin, which is 60 to 70% pure. Unlike high-grade white heroin, which is exported and injected into the addict's vein, red heroin is smoked in a method called chasing the dragon. With a base powder, usually barbitone, the heroin is heated on a piece of tinfoil. Then the addict inhales the fumes through a tube of rolled paper the size of a drinking straw. The mixture rolls back and forth on the foil. The fumes waver in the air as the addict chases them. hence the name Chasing the Dragon. The problem now is that narcotics are no longer confined to the broken, the disillusioned, the coolie who sees little ahead but a decade of rickshaw pulling. 10% of Hong Kong's addicts are under 19 years old. Some are affluent and educated. Today, the addict is to be found not only in the clandestine opium divans or smoking places, but also in the discotheques and bars frequented by the swinging teenage set. Prominent in the narcotics business are the Chiu Chow. These are tough Chinese from the Swato area of Fujian. They are conveniently spread throughout Thailand as well as Hong Kong. They have a built-in network for transporting opium and morphine from Thailand for consumption and transshipment in Hong Kong. Experts in Hong Kong find little evidence that narcotics enter the colony directly from communist China. Though some opium is probably grown in China's Yunnan province, the main source in this part of the world is the border area where Burma, Thailand, Laos and China converge. Transit routes thereafter run through Thailand and the Malaysian peninsula to ports from which the illegal produce can be exported. Once at sea, narcotics are hard to detect. Seamen hide them in tanks and hatches, steam pipes and hollowed-out capstans. With 6,000 ships calling at Hong Kong each year, the 200-man preventive service clearly faces a mammoth task spot-checking ships. They devote special attention to vessels coming from black ports, ports like Bangkok and Singapore, which are traditional shipment points for drugs. Preventive service officials also have developed a small but comprehensive research section which closely follows the pattern of trade through Hong Kong. They obtain cargo manifests in advance of a ship's arrival. They check out the shipper and the importer. They keep a tally on world prices. If movement of a particular consignment does not seem economic, or if the companies involved with it are suspected, the cargo gets special scrutiny. Government agents became suspicious of a shipment of refrigerators from Malaysia. Ripping into them, they uncovered 1 1/4 tons of opium and morphine. In a separate cargo of bamboo poles, police found 3,000 pounds of opium. Preventive service officers say that by these methods, they have reduced drug smuggling aboard ocean-going ships entering Hong Kong harbour. What we have done, says one, is force the narcotics traffickers onto the beaches. They do not get as much in through the port now. What the police need is information. For leads on delivery times, rendezvous points, and transshipment arrangements, the Narcotics Bureau pays well. But the traffickers' security precautions are tight. A boatman hired to bring in a drug shipment will get little chance to tip off the police. If his bosses suspect him of informing, his body will be washed up one day on one of Hong Kong's outlying beaches. Prospects of substantially reducing the drug traffic into and through Hong Kong do not look good. Some accuse the British colonial government of paying only lip service to solving the problem. A semi-official survey last year revealed widespread public cynicism about the government's determination. Of the people questioned, 86% believed the government could stop drug trafficking if it really wanted to. Within the Police Narcotics Bureau, there are officers who feel it is the poor relation of the force. For the task set it, the preventive service works with slender resources. Meanwhile, there are critics who believe much tougher action is required against convicted traffickers. A 22-year-old man was arrested for possession of narcotics. The evidence was discovered in his pocket by the parents of a 14-year-old girl found under the influence of drugs. The man got a fine of just 250 Hong Kong dollars, 41 United States dollars. That kind of sentencing seems hardly likely to wipe out a narcotics business that, in Hong Kong alone, brings traffickers some $38 million a year. The only tangible way to dry up the drug traffic may be to cure the addict. But there are lesser steps that could, and urgently should, be taken. In this, the last of a series of articles, Christian Science Monitor editor John Hughes describes some of them. A senior international civil servant with experience in the narcotics field, was analyzing the drug problem. In the long run, he said reflectively, the solution must be worked out on the metaphysical level. Programs to cut back the flow of drugs are important. Those of us involved in them are fascinated by the technique. But this is basically cops and robbers stuff. It all ends up with the user, the addict. The solution to his problem must be a metaphysical one. He has to work out the riddle. What is man? And can he find himself through drugs? The drug is no more than a placebo. Medical experiments show you can get the same effect on a user by injecting ordinary water. What the addict is seeking is escape, and the ultimate escape into oblivion is suicide. Many of them attempt this, but clearly it is not the answer. 5 months of investigation into the narcotics traffic around the world lead one to a similar conclusion, that the crux of the problem is education and regeneration of the actual user, and perhaps too, of the society which contributes to his degradation. The gloomiest of those in the anti-narcotics business argue that without reform of the addict, successful disruption of the narcotics traffic would create a crisis in such countries as the United States. Says one, we will get drugstores held up, and doctors and hospitals will be robbed as addicts try to get their first-hand anything they can. Whether or not this picture is overdrawn, elimination of the illegal inflow of narcotic drugs seems hardly an early prospect. This is not to say that disrupting the traffic is not important. Here, extracted from a cross-section of expert opinion, are some moves that might help. A bigger role for the United Nations. Member nations are never likely to give the United Nations a policeman's assignment with United Nations narcotics agents deployed operationally. But the United Nations could do more to replace opium with better cash-paying crops. More pressure on major offending countries. Some of this could come from the United Nations, says one narcotics expert. If the United Nations had been tougher about Turkey earlier, we would be further ahead than we are today. The time has come to stop being nice guys around the world. This problem is too serious. Strengthening of anti-narcotics agencies. In the United States, this is being done largely as the result of public concern over the narcotics problem. Research. So far, scientists have made no dramatic breakthroughs with equipment that might eliminate the narcotics traffic, but they should go on trying. The Vietnam War has produced several promising devices, notably ground sensors to monitor movement across remote borders, as well as sensing or sniffing devices to detect opium and marijuana growth from the air. The Atomic Energy Commission is working on a portable atomic camera to pinpoint narcotic shipments hidden in cargoes and suitcases. Research is underway to trace chemical waste from clandestine heroin factories. Most of all this is still in the experimental stage. Best results so far have come from the old-fashioned police dog specially trained to sniff out narcotics. Stiffer legislation and court action. This is a tricky area. Almost without exception, narcotics officers feel restricted and on the defensive when they go into court these days. Almost unanimously, they want tougher legislation against narcotics offenders. If they do not have the no-knock provision when raiding suspect narcotics dives, for example, they contend traffickers can always get rid of drugs, usually down the toilet, before opening up to lawmen. Narcotics agents are frustrated when a San Bernardino, California judge throws out a case in which they discovered heroin being smuggled in a baby's diapers. The judge ruled the search unconstitutional because the 9-month-old baby did not consent to the search. The problem, of course, is that the desire for tougher action against narcotics offenders runs slap into the opposition of groups and individuals sensitive to any diminution of civil liberties. Even so, the trend in a number of countries is toward tougher penalties for traffickers, with greater leniency for drug users. Is the addict sick or a criminal? How best can he be reached? Young dabblers in narcotics, particularly those on soft drugs like marijuana, are often turned off by drug education lectures that preach. What role can reform addicts play in getting through to potential addicts? How about pop disc jockeys? Some radio programs, both commercial and underground, have encouraged drug taking. Now a number of disc jockeys are working with narcotics officials to combat this trend. What can industry and business do? They should be concerned. According to the Research Institute of America, leading American companies now consider drug taking by employees a fundamental problem. Along the international narcotics trail, brave young agents can work long and difficult hours, sometimes putting their lives on the line to break the traffic. But their dedication is meaningless unless questions like these are answered at home.